Hello, everybody. My name is Terry Arndt. I'm the president of Life After Graduation College Transition Publishing. I'll be serving as your host today, and I'd like to personally thank each and every one of you for joining us on today's webinar, Veterans on Campus, Essentials for Advisors, Staff, and Faculty. Before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items. First of all your phones have been muted. This is to allow us to make sure we get through all the program in the allotted time. But certainly there is a question and answer area on your screen. Please do post questions throughout the program, and I will be monitoring those to best put those into the program as time allows. And certainly if we don't address all the questions, myself and the presenter will be able to address those with you individually after the program. A recording of the presentation will be forwarded to you via email afterwards. This is for you to refer to at a later point if you'd like to go back and review the program, or feel free to share it with your colleagues. In that email, we'll also include any kind of links to white papers, resources, or other information that the presenter or I discussed during the program. So with that, it appears everything is set to go. So let's get started. Our presenter today is Dr. Nicholas Osborne. He's the Director of Veteran Support Services at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. He's also the author of the new book, Life During College, The Veteran's Guide to Success. It's a new college guide written specifically for military veterans transitioning through college. Nick has conducted numerous studies on military veteran transition issues and written numerous white papers related to veteran transition into college. Now, to provide you a little bit of background, Nick and I met about a year ago in San Diego when I was presenting and exhibiting some of our first year experience products at a conference. Nick had come up to me and asked, what kind of resources do you have for military veterans on campus? And I said, well, we have the ability to customize our books and our services for those smaller niche markets. And he kind of chuckled, looked at me and said, I don't think the veterans are quite the niche market that you think. It was over the next several months, Nick and I exchanged emails. He sent me some data, showed me some resources, and came to fruition, showed me truly how large an audience the military veteran is on college campuses today, and the limited resources that are available to them. So with that, we took on the idea of producing a book. And I invited him to be the author of that book. And he said, I'd be happy to do it as long as you promise to provide free resources to help advisors, staff, faculty better serve those military veterans. So with that, we have what we have today, a free webinar for everybody to join in on. So with that, thanks for joining us today, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's my pleasure to be here, and I want to thank everybody who's tuning in. I think that one thing that I often talk about at conferences or at the University of Illinois is that student veterans are part of what make our campus diverse, and they're an that we need a lot of different players on campus to be able to work with this group. And so I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to share my experiences. Just a brief introduction. I served in the Coast Guard, enlisted as well as an officer. I worked in law enforcement and intelligence. I did a year-long deployment back in 2006. And then when I came out, I was finishing my doctorate at the University of California, Davis, and became a readjustment therapist at the VA. So I've worked with this population now and with my military time for over a decade. And it's just a great, very rich population to work with.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your service. So the first thing I want to ask, today is, why are we hearing so much about veterans in higher education right now?
That's a good question. One thing that we want to look at is the context. And we've been at war for going on 14 years at this point. It's kind of hard to believe. And we have about 250,000 and about 90% of them are under the age of 35, which makes them very much college bound. And while they were working in the military, they had steady income and a job. But what many of them find when they get out is, hey, I need something new now. I need to take what I've done in the military, but I also need to get some civilian training. And so a lot of them end up going into school. And then also coupled with that is we have the post 9/11 GI Bill, which since 2009, we've had over 1 million veterans enroll in a post-secondary degree program. So right now, student veterans make up about 4% of the entire undergraduate student population in America.
Wow. So certainly not a niche, right?
Right, right. And it's only going to grow. I mean, we're seeing these numbers continue to grow, and we're expecting the American Council on Education and several others expect that this will continue to grow in the next several years.
Okay. Now, I know both you and I have attended numerous veteran-related conferences so far this year. A common term I've seen used to identify student veterans is non-traditional. When people mention that, what is it that they really mean?
So when we think about traditional students, we typically think about 17, 18-year-olds who were living at home with their parents, finished high school, and then they started school. For a non-traditional learner, oftentimes they're older. Sometimes they're balancing families, or they're going to school while they're working full-time or three-quarters time. And oftentimes they'll commute to campus. And the reason that that's important is it's easy for them to not be as integrated into the campus. Whereas if you're living in the residence halls and you show up at 18, it can be a very transformative experience because you're starting school at such a young age. For a non-traditional learner, they're oftentimes having to do school and integrate it with all these other life commitments that they have. And student veterans, I think, are even more unique, Terry, because in addition to all their non-traditional features, they also have the factor of being on active duty. Some of them have deployed, some of them have supervised other people. So now they have this wealth of experience and they show up at campus and it's like, wow, where do I fit in?
Yeah. And I know some of the conference I've talked to, it's like giving scenarios of a military veteran being put into a team project with a couple 18-year-olds, and instantly you can recognize the struggles that are going to occur there, right?
You know, the first year experience course that you and I talked about in San Diego, and that really precipitated the book, is in many ways what happened at our campus and many campuses across the country is they have these mandatory first year courses. And so veterans get into these courses and they're surrounded with these 18-year-old traditional students, and they're saying, wow, you know, I'm 27 and I'm married with 2 kids, and where do I fit in here? I just feel out of place. So I think it's important for higher ed professionals to really see what a unique population this is, and then assess, ask the question, is this an appropriate fit for this group?
Good. Now, you know, one of the conferences I was attending was in Boston earlier this year. The hotel I was staying at was, you know, a couple miles from the conference venue, so I decided to Uber. And the driver who picked me up was a military veteran. On his plate said military veteran, and which started a conversation. Certainly, I was in town to talk about veteran issues. And so I'd asked him about his education, what he'd done, and he told me that he'd gone to a 2-year college for a while. When he got back, wasn't able to complete it. He felt it just wasn't for him, and he dropped out. Yeah. You know, as we sat in traffic, you know, I talked a little bit more about what he really wanted to accomplish, and he said, you know, I'd really like to get a degree, but you know what, it just wasn't worth it. Things like family and life, my wife, the kids, the challenges, and plus I couldn't figure out how to pay for it. So it just wasn't worth it, and he just, in a sense, gave up. Right. Now, and I know you hear tons of stories like this as well. What are some of the core challenges that, you know, this gentleman as well as other veterans are encountering when they transition to college?
Well, I think you just touched on a lot of them. It's that they have other commitments that they're having to balance. They're having to figure out how to pay for it. And one thing we talk about in the book is just going from a full-time active duty salary with benefits to now I'm a student and I'm on a very limited income. So how does that work now? And other core areas, as we mentioned earlier, is that veterans have a tendency to isolate on campus because many of them get there and they feel out of place. So really wanting to bring them in and get them connected is exceptionally important, especially during that first semester, or many of them just don't really want to stick around and continue. I think perceptions, Terry, are important. Obviously, we've been at war for a long time, and it's unlike wars in the past. A lot of our students have done multiple deployments, not just one. But there's also this fear among many student veterans and that there's going to be this perception that there's something wrong with them. And so working with faculty and staff, it's really important that they're assessing their assumptions and crafting their questions carefully when they work with student veterans. And another part is having unclear academic goals. When you're in the military, you're told what time to get up, where to go, and you have a specific job. And when you start school, sometimes it's not very clear what it is they want to study and how this all fits in to eventually lead to a career. And then the last piece that I think is really critical to mention is many student veterans are still affiliated with the National Guard or the reserves while they're attending school. And so there's the likelihood that they could be called up at some point where they have to leave their studies and go back into a full-time military status. So again, there's just all these very unique features and challenges that go with this group.
Considering some of these aspects, do student veterans have specific advising needs? Certainly addressed a number of topics. So when it comes to advising, what are some of the needs that they have?
So most veterans are going to school on the VA's dime, so to speak. And so the VA has an accountability system to make sure that what they're studying is part of a degree program. And, we kind of joke around that you can't take underwater basket weaving. The VA is going to look at that and say, okay, these courses that you're enrolled in, we want to make sure that this is leading to a productive degree program. So there's definitely those unique advising needs. And I think that a good advisor, in addition to the academic piece, they also want to figure out the social piece, the social and the emotional. How are student veterans doing in their transition? Are there types of resources that they need that they're not getting? Do they have questions that are coming up? These are all very, very important for an advisor to figure out and to address.
So in your experience, I know this is a big question on a lot of the conferences I went to about veterans self-identifying, on campus. And I think colleges are now moving to the fact that they're offering in-state tuitions and other benefits to veterans. They have it on the application. But from an advising perspective, it really kind of depends on if the student does identify themselves as a veteran so that it can better serve them, right?
Yeah, and that's a great question. What we do at Illinois is we have a question on our admissions app. And then when a student veteran registers for classes, if they're using VA benefits, we'll have a record of that. And so what I do is I look at the admissions sheet and then I look at the financial aid sheet. And I also send out an email to all incoming veterans that we've identified just to welcome them and let them know that we have a single point of contact on campus. We've got a lot of resources available and really encourage them to reach out and make that communication.
Good. I know in my discussions with instructors, staff, advisors that don't commonly work with military veterans, there's a lot of misconceptions, right? So what are some misconceptions that you see from your experience related to student veterans?
Again, I would say going back to the earlier comment about this concept of that they've been traumatized or that they're possibly dangerous is a big piece that many student veterans I've worked with have shared. For example, if you're working with a student veteran and you say, oh, you were in the Marine Corps and you served in Afghanistan, and then in the next sentence you say, oh, we have a great counseling center on campus. It's a well-intentioned thing to say, but the veteran may receive that message as very off-putting or disrespectful. And so I think that it's important to build a relationship with student veterans, to really check our assumptions and biases. There's very few military and veteran personnel who work in higher ed, and sometimes the only veteran they know was a grandfather or some distant relative. And so utilizing resources and webinars are just so important to really make sure we're accurate assessments about these students, and we're not overstepping those boundaries with sweeping judgments or assumptions.
Okay. Now, I noticed when you talked about advising and some of the specifics related to that, number of questions popped up on the screen. How can faculty and staff learn more about ways to connect with student veterans?
So there should be a veterans liaison at most colleges and campuses, and this person, his or her role is to have a program in place for both students, but also for the faculty and staff as a resource. And so if for example, if you're working with a student veteran and it comes up that the student has several needs or questions, making sure you know who that point of contact is important. Obviously, through us, through College Transition Publishing, if they're interested in a more in-depth advising, we can provide that type of service. But I think it's really about looking at those existing resources first on campus, and being part of a Veterans Advisory Committee is another. We're seeing more and more at colleges across the country, they're offering formal faculty and staff training. And I would say the last piece is just going out to the academic journals. There's been a lot published in recent years about student veterans, along with ways to serve them. So getting that 30,000 foot view and then isolating it down to your own campus is a great strategy.
Now, I know when we first met, we connected, and I asked you to write the book, the Veterans Guide to Success. Tell me about the book and how it can be utilized in a transition program and the benefits it offers student veterans.
So, I was at the NASPA 2015 Veterans Conference, which is like the veterans conference for the country. I was in Louisville, Kentucky. And so many people came up and they said, we've been waiting for something like this. And the book gives the realistic landscape of what student veterans from feeling uncertain or feeling afraid about being a student to fitting into these are the different types of resources on campus to budgeting. These are all parts of that whole transformative piece that a service member experiences when transitioning. So I would say that it can be effectively utilized by if a university or a college wanted to just provide them to incoming veterans, that would be fantastic. If they want to embed them as part of a transition course like we do at Illinois. But I think that getting this book to them early is so vital because it addresses so many of those early questions that they have and that honestly are just so pivotal for keeping them there and enrolled during that first year.
Good. And I know on my side, just visiting with a few clients who have purchased the book and asking them about their implementation, it's been some of the things you mentioned. Some of them are purchasing to put into their veteran center and just have them as resources for students to pick up and refer to. Other ones are using it as a engagement of those students before they even show up to campus. So once they've been accepted, they're sending them to them as a gift to kind of let them read over and absorb that information so that they're prepared because they know when they come to campus there's going to be all kinds of activities to fill up their time. And then other ones, as you mentioned, are using it as part of a course, where there is a first year experience course that they're required to go through. And now they're just using that guide as a basis for that. So a broad spectrum. So good.
And I think it's important to add too, Terry, that even among graduate student veterans who already have degrees, several of them have talked to me about just going back to school after being in the military for several years. They're also feeling that initial transition shock or uncertainty. And so I think that the book really provides the depth and the transitional awareness for a wide spectrum of students, whether they're at community colleges or four-year schools or they're in graduate or professional programs.
Good. Well, I see our questions are lightening up about where do I get a copy, things of that nature. I did want to let everybody know that's participating on today's webinar that if you visit our website, and it's going to be posted here on the screen, collegetransitionpublishing.com, there's going to be a link there, as well as an email we send you where you can choose to request a sample. Nick and I have arranged to have a free downloadable copy for you that you can get, or for a $10 fee plus some shipping and handling, we'll send you a hard copy for you to look at as well. Now, these books normally sell for $29.95, so it is a benefit for people who are participating on this program only. So be sure to take advantage of that over the next few days, as that link will go away in a short period of time. So be sure to take advantage of that. It's also important, I think, to note that like all of our publications, this one's customizable. And I know I mentioned that to Nick when we first met about customizing it for your specific needs. Every college feels that they have a unique audience, which is great. We want the book to be or have the ability to be unique for your audience. So we can customize the cover, we can add content, we can do all kinds of things. It's one of the benefits of being a small publisher. But also one of the benefits I do need to let people know about is sponsorships. Almost 80% of my clients I work with don't purchase the book. Someone else buys it for them. So your local credit union, maybe you have a relationship with an organization like USAA or another type of banking institution focused for military veterans. Certainly ping them, use them, and talk to them about the book. We can certainly add their logo content from them to help them feel like they're custom or sponsoring the book, so that you can give it to a larger audience on their dime versus your limited budgets. So with that, I'm going to ask you, one thing people have asked, I don't think I've gone to a conference lately where someone hasn't come up to me after presenting or when they get a copy of the book and say, man, this is great. This is a great resource. I haven't had it before. I just been tasked with creating our veterans program on campus, and I have no clue what to do.
Yes.
What's your response to that?
That was a question that I faced about 5 years ago. And I think that this book provides a fantastic platform for giving the landscape of what student veterans are experiencing. And then I think that in terms of action points, Terry, the first step is you want to build a team. And so an advisory committee or an advisory work group, but getting representation from a lot of different offices on campus, like the Dean of Students, financial aid, all these groups, the counseling center. And it's important to plot out what you want to accomplish in, say, the first 6 months, and then what you want to accomplish in a year. And 2 years, our goal was to get a student veterans lounge, and we got it in 1.5 years, and it's just been this phenomenal resource. But it's really about taking deliberate steps and making the type of buy-in that's so important. And getting perspective from the student veterans themselves. They're going to tell you, they're a vocal group, and they're oftentimes going to tell you what's working, what's not working. So I think that keeping them on the committee, but also just having engagements with them is very important for having a successful veterans program. And the last piece that I would emphasize is creating events that generate visibility, because student veterans, again, they have a tendency to isolate. And so you want to bring them up through the larger campus. And we've done that through a couple of discussion panels, through reflective writing sessions, through, we actually had a national conference that centered on veterans in higher education, but really showing the broader campus community that they are here, they have these unique needs, but they also have these great strengths that we want to continue to build on.
Great. Now to bring up a bunch of questions from people about resources. What resources do you or I or the company have to offer to help institutions start a program or a course for veterans if they don't have one? Now, I'll have you answer that first.
Mm-hmm. So we have the webinars, we have the white papers, and then obviously we've got the book that's going to be essentially the map. And then if organizations or groups are interested in actually specific individualized attention, then we can also provide consulting as well. And part of what I do when I consult is I look at what is the existing landscape at a college or a university. What are they looking to accomplish? And then how do we pull these down into just very realistic and fiscally responsible steps? And then how are we going to measure and assess and make sure that we're getting the outcomes that we anticipate?
Great. And I know from just based on our conversation when you come in and consult, now if someone's interested in reaching out to you, we're going to have our pictures and screen and contact information up at the end of this webinar. But initially, someone can reach out to you directly, ask you some questions, and then at that point, you can let them know, hey, certainly here's some options for consulting. But initial reach out there, you're happy to take those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Now, in just the past few months of speaking, on campuses, as well as on these different events that we've attended, I know the the people serving the military veterans on campus are a very passionate group. They understand they're underfunded. They have limited resources. They're in a sense breaking ground on new areas that the campuses have not experienced before. But they continue to work hard because they want the students they do serve to be successful. So, to say the least, I'm very impressed and honestly moved by their dedication and determination. If you could provide them one piece of advice to help them keep motivated, keep working forward on that, what would you tell them?
That's a $1 million question. I would say the most important thing, Terry, is to build an authentic program that includes authentic engagement with the student veterans themselves. And what I mean by that is ensuring that every step that you're doing is for the right reasons. It's been researched, there's a need for it, but they're also getting the student veteran input there and making sure that those relationships are in place with the students. I think that that's the most important part, because what you're doing then is you're creating a context of trust. And that's what we did here at Illinois. And now the student veterans, they come to us, they're very clear with what their needs are, and we've got that beautiful wave of communication that allows us to take those steps.
Awesome. Well, I know you mentioned several times white papers. You've wrote a couple for us. We're going to have a webinar series. So this is one of hopefully multiple webinars we're going to be hosting. Certainly a website. If you go to our website, we're going to be continuing to add free resources. If it's funny, I tell people the most popular page on my website is the one that's called Free Stuff. So be sure to go there, take advantage of that. And of course, there's additional publications to come that we're working on. But I ask everybody who's participating on this program, please contact me if there's specific resources or information that you're needing or that you'd like to see us cover. By all means, let us know. Nick, other people within the area and serving in this capacity will certainly try our best to gather that information and make that a free resource for everybody. Wonderful. So keep posted on that. Now, Nick, I know one person asked here, I know you have presented at various conferences, as I have, on veteran student issues. Do you speak on campuses to educators as well as to students?
I do. I primarily work with staff, faculty and staff in various committees. In the past 18 months, I've probably been working with about 15 to 20 research universities to local community colleges to private schools. So I work with a fairly diverse group, and then I also work with some student veterans. We have a very active student veterans organization on our campus. So oftentimes I'll go out with my students and we'll go to other schools and talk a little bit about how we've built this relationship between the student veterans and the veterans office and how they can do something similar on their own campus.
Awesome. Well, I know we have a number of other topics here, but unfortunately we're at the time limit. So I do want to get this wrapped up, but as I promised, Nick and I will definitely get together and answer those questions individually for those people who we did not get their answers to their questions in this program. And of course, we will include a slide here in a moment with Nick and my contact information. So you can feel free to contact us directly as well on anything we talked about or have additional questions you didn't get to post. In addition, you're going to be receiving an email with a copy of this program and a links to the white papers, the webinars, other things we've talked about. And I know, Nick, you and I have agreed to put together at least a couple more webinars as well, and different components as well, right?
That's right.
Okay. So great. Well, hey, Nick, thank you for participating in today's program.
My pleasure. I want to just thank everybody who's tuned in with us, and I appreciate the work you're doing. It's very valuable. There's a lot of steps, a lot of layers to it, but let us know what we can do also on our end to make you successful and to make your student veterans successful.
Perfect. Again, thank you everybody for participating. We will be in contact with those who have additional questions, but all means, please contact Nick or I with questions as well. And our contact information will be up here. And by all means, please remember to take advantage of the book special we have available for our participants today. Thank you.